China's dream of invasion Taiwan is over. Why? As global tensions escalate in recent years, the world has been watching the South China Sea. Something is coming, there are signs. Chinese Civil War relic. Both mainland China and Taiwan claim to be the real, legitimate Chinese government. Indeed, if conflict broke out between the two, many see it as a civil war continuation. Virtually frozen since the communists seized control of the mainland, nationalists fled to Taiwan. Taiwan is clearly militarily weaker, so its major concern now is sustaining the status quo. The situation is tight, although the island remains democratic and autonomous. However, China has said that they want to unify the two populations later, if forced. Indeed, U.S. intelligence just disclosed that Xi Jinping may have ordered his military prepare for such an invasion by 2027. Given China's military and Taiwan's population, this would be enormous conflict. Every participant knows it might potentially spiral, became one of the worst 21st century wars. This is why China understands they can't attack till their chances of winning peak. If this massive effort failed, China might face a major disaster, not merely militarily, also socially and economically. Welcome to my latest video. We discuss China's dream of invasion Taiwan is over. Why? Please subscribe, comment, and help me build this channel. Telling pals and like it. Let's explore this intriguing subject. Chinese desire to rule Taiwan is apparent, but using force would be difficult and expensive. Though China still favors unification via peaceful means with Taiwan, it never stopped employing force. As peaceful Taiwan control becomes less likely, with Taiwanese identity strengthening and unification desire, with PRC decline, China may decide that force works. Only this will fulfill its political goals. Invading Taiwan or blocking it would be difficult. The most complicated military operation ever. A significant conflict has not been fought by China's military in almost 70 years. To conquer Taiwan, China would have to launch a massive military operation, coordinating air, land, sea, electronic, and cyber warfare. When China will attack Taiwan becomes clearer. To many internal and external influences, the Chinese government is reviewing its military preparedness. US, Japan, and Taiwan responses saw worldwide reactions, regional military power equilibrium, and US political willingness to intervene. Despite these obstacles, China is spending heavily on capability development to force Taiwan under its rule. Chinese leader Xi Jinping wants Taiwan unification, the essence of national rejuvenation, which he says must be done by 2049. PRC 100th anniversary. The real possibility of Chinese military action versus Taiwan remains low. With so much hostile equipment in restricted air and water corridors, accidents may happen, and any event that raises direct armed conflict risk between the world's two strongest nations is crucial. However, Taiwan's president has said China is unlikely to invade soon because domestic issues overwhelm it. What are China's overwhelmed internal issues? Anticipating Taiwan invasion? China has various major internal issues that may preclude military action against Taiwan. 1. Economic issues. Various economic indices show China's economy underperforming. The country's economic paradigm is unsustainable for years. Given ultra-low consumer spending, China is facing its largest economic shift in decades. Factory to the world, model shift to a more self-sufficient and domestic paradigm. Economic instability prevents China from invading. With a 2022 GDP forecast of $17.9 trillion, China has the second highest GDP behind the US. For years, China's GDP was expected to overtake America's, with the issue not whether but when. However, recent events have cast doubt on this possibility. China's economy may be declining like its demography. First, the 2023 Chinese GDP is expected to decline $200 billion to $17.7 trillion, below the 2021 GDP. The downturn is projected to continue. Besides unemployment, 2023 witnessed a major reduction in domestic travel, automobile sales, electric vehicles crisis, and the housing crisis. China's property situation is exceptionally bad, with banks granting the fewest long-term home loans in a decade. This issue has been developing since 2020, when house prices dropped and numerous real estate businesses went bankrupt. Companies stopped constructing homes, unable to finish units they'd sold. Thus, many families refused to pay the mortgage. Developers are waiting for a market shift, leaving many units incomplete. According to estimates, Chinese cities have 80 million abandoned homes, making areas seem like ghost towns. This, among other concerns, has caused the property market to plummet in recent years, as Chinese residents save rather than invest in real estate, which they no longer trust. To make matters worse, China's exports have suffered too. The end of the epidemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine have raised global inflation. Rising inflation reduces spending as money tightens and is spent on needs. Since exports account for 20% of China's GDP, this worldwide spending drop is terrible news. From 2022 to 2023, shipments to Europe and the US fell, and it's unclear when they'll rebound, with US exports being the most gloomy, due to conflicts over microchip manufacture. China's sputtering economy doesn't want sanctions or a deepening chip war. If a fast strike fails, a protracted attrition battle would be exorbitant. Turning political opponents become foes with the US would have terrible global ramifications for decades. 2. The wealth gap. China has been the most populous country on Earth for a long time. Even now, it has roughly double Europe's population, from 600 million to 1.4 billion. China's population grew rapidly during the 1960s and 2010s. For the first time in contemporary history, China is losing its demographic dominance. It was dethroned. India became the most populous nation in 2023. According to the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, China's dwindling population is due to its chronically low birth rate, which has now caught up with it. An average industrialized country requires 2.1 children per woman to sustain its population. Higher than this ratio, your population will grow. Lower, it will shrink. China's fertility rate dropped to a historic low of 1.09 in 2023. If it continues as low as predicted, the country might suffer. First, the population will shrink, but this will also raise the median age. Population size, structure, and distribution important. This distribution is changing most in the working age population, 15 to 49. China's population in this age group peaked around 2010, and is predicted to drop by 40% in the future decades, which is bad for the economy and military. 3. Aging population. The Chinese population is increasingly aging, influenced by the one-child policy. The effects of population decline take years to manifest. If historically low birth rates persist, China's industrial power and economic prosperity may suffer. Some impacts are already obvious. In 2000, China had 6.5 workers per retiree. That declined to 5.4 by 2010. The 2020 number was 3.6. Current predictions have this number falling to 1.7 by 2040, which would burden the Chinese economy. Fewer youthful, enthusiastic, and trainable workers are poised to replace retiring seniors. Youth unemployment is rising in China, compounding this job shortage. In June 2023, the 16 to 24 unemployment rate hit a record 21%, up 15% in 2 years. In 2024, this statistic may worsen. The Chinese government won't reveal the statistics, which is bad. Instead of a lack of employment, China's young have an issue with the nature of those occupations. China has pushed for university education for decades, increasing the number of students from 22 million in 1990 to 380 million in 2021. This is a tremendous triumph for a country that was destitute decades ago. Job possibilities have not kept pace with this expansion, particularly in services. Service industries including healthcare, administration, education, and more employ roughly half the nation's workers. Recent years have seen a fall in service employment, as the Chinese government has prioritized agriculture and manufacturing. which the nation sorely needs. Despite government pressure, young computer science, psychology, and business graduates don't want to work in factories. The nation's demographic and economic difficulties are exacerbated by this rising youth unemployment rate. China's economy may be too shaky for a hazardous conflict. In the 1970s and 80s, Japan was thought to have an unstoppable economy, with little sign of stopping. It ultimately slowed, and although the nation is financially well affluent, the economy has stalled. We may be witnessing the same impact in China. Or things may be heading bad. If so, China may have missed its financial window to strike. Let's ignore China's economy. Invading Taiwan is a Herculean job even if their administration was sure their population and finances could sustain a large battle. 4. Party control of private business. Recent efforts to exert party control over private industry are significant. A previous paper called Xi Jinping's Politics in Command Economy. These issues might cause civil upheaval. That would weaken the government. The way China handles these major issues will also impact the way it treats the planet, and if its economy boosts or slows global growth. How does Taiwan assess China's military threat? Taiwan is well aware of China's military danger and has taken many attempts to combat it. Some major points. Taiwan repositioned Sky-Bo 3 air defense systems in reaction to ongoing aerial activity in southern Taiwan. Taiwan also reports differently. Military actions on the island by China. Most U.S. and Taiwanese professionals surveyed said, China cannot successfully invade Taiwan amphibiously, but is well positioned to blockade. Taiwanese specialists saw China as less of a danger than U.S. experts, and consistently ranked China worse than U.S. respondents. An expert from Taiwan said, "We will see most military maneuvers as intimidation till the PLA's activities tip. But when certain signs appear, Taiwan's civic society will respond more." Chinese People's Liberation Army. These behaviors and opinions suggest Taiwan closely monitors and responds to China's military activity, keeping a balanced view of the danger. The issue is complicated and evolving. What does China think about Taiwan's independence? Taiwan's independence movement is strongly opposed by China. Some major points. China considers Taiwan a renegade province and warns Taiwan's independence bid means war. China worries about Taiwan's leadership is preparing the island for independence. China thinks Taiwan and mainland China are two halves of one country's territory. China has portrayed Taiwanese elections as peace and war, labeling the DPP dangerous separatists. Encourage Taiwanese to make the right choice. The Chinese Defense Ministry defends its military actions near Taiwan, calling steps needed to address the Taiwan Strait security scenario to protect national sovereignty and security. These thoughts suggest China is powerful, opposed to Taiwan's independence, and will take great steps to avoid it. This is a complicated and changing issue. How does the U.S. see Taiwan? The U.S. and Taiwan have a strong unofficial connection, governed by Taiwan Relations Act, the 6 assurances and 3 U.S.-China joint communiques. Some major points. U.S. considers Taiwan a crucial Indo-Pacific partner. Similar ideals, strong commercial and economic ties, strong interpersonal bonds. U.S. rejects unilateral status quo alterations, opposes Taiwan independence, and wants peaceful cross-strait resolutions. The U.S. provides military goods and services as needed for Taiwan's self-defense. U.S. law mandates Taiwan defense assistance, although it practices strategic ambiguity, purposefully ambiguous regarding its actions. If China attacked Taiwan, President Joe Biden said the U.S. would support Taiwan if China invaded. Later, the White House confirmed that this did not affect policy. The U.S. has no diplomatic relations with Taiwan. It sells armaments to it under the Taiwan Relations Act. Let's start with the obvious. Water separates Taiwan from China by 60 miles or 110 kilometers. This implies an invading force may forget about armored ground vehicles and rely on aircraft operations and an extraordinary amphibious invasion. though China's military still outweighs Taiwan's. This fact alone reduces its military might. They'll likely face more risks than Taiwan in an invasion. The US will likely intervene and ask its regional partners for help. This covers South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and maybe Australia and New Zealand. Japan, which has started spending hundreds of billions more on its military, is swiftly becoming one of the Asia's strongest military force. Speaking of Russia, it's very possible that Putin's struggles in Ukraine have highlighted the unfeasibility of invading Taiwan. After all, Russia's military absolutely dwarfed Ukraine's in terms of manpower, tanks, and the fact that the Russian Navy ranks in the world's top 3, while Ukraine doesn't even have a navy. Regardless, Ukraine surprised the world by putting up a stiff resistance, spearheaded by Western anti-tank and anti-air weapons. Being on the defensive is an advantage that nobody should underestimate. An advantage strong enough to often turn the tide of war. As the war continues to evolve in Eastern Europe, Russia's ongoing uphill battle sends a constant unspoken message to China. A warning that Taiwan could be far stronger than meets the eye. And Taiwan is only getting stronger with the threat of invasion imminent. The island has been stockpiling weapons and vehicles, knowing that a naval blockade could easily cut it off from Allied supply lines. With every new imported F-16, howitzer, and surface-to-air missile system landing on the coast of Taiwan and dominating its skies, an invasion becomes ever more costly. Let's also keep in mind that China's military is largely untested and inexperienced in large-scale conflict. China has not been to war since a brief conflict with Vietnam in 1979, and its military has yet to experience large-scale modern combat, as opposed to the United States, which has a whole heap of operational experience, from things like the Gulf War, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, and many more. What would happen if all these countries went to war? It would certainly convert the operation into a drawn-out, ugly, and deadly fight. It does imply that China's ideal invasion of Taiwan must succeed before these other military powers can mobilize. This would include conquering the whole island, or encircling it and controlling the sky in days. Reminiscent of Russia's 3-day invasion that is now nearing 2 years? As said, these facts make it evident to many that conquering Taiwan is riskier than it's worth. The best time for this invasion may have gone, and China's dream of invading Taiwan is very hard to be true. At least within 5 more years. The video for today ended. We appreciate your time watching this informative video. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss groundbreaking material. If you liked the video, sharing it with friends, commenting, and like. Goodbye and good day.